only me that can be seen. So, all right. So welcome everybody. Good morning. My name is Robby. For those who haven't seen me before, over the summer we're doing a bunch of different talks with different people leading it. So I am on for today, and so it's a pleasure to, just guide us through the talk today. So, what I have developed. The talk is also, for those who are watching it live, it's on WhatsApp, or potentially Austin can drop that in the chat as well. So we're talking today about developing our recovery communities. So the road to recovery is not meant to be traveled alone. The 12 steps are a great example of this, as none of the steps use the word I, and instead they all reference we instead. I believe that we ideally need 3 different areas of community to support us on our recovery journey. These 3 areas of community are, first and foremost, we need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and be a part of a church family. Secondly, we need to be actively involved in a recovery group or a recovery meeting, or multiple. And thirdly, we need a relationship with a sponsor and accountability partners. Some of you may not have all 3 areas of the recovery community currently, or you may be skeptical that you really need to walk alongside others in this recovery journey. My goal for today is to provide my reasoning as for why each area of community is so important. And I hope that this discussion will inspire you to evaluate your current recovery community and consider how you could be further supported in this. So what is recovery community? Recovery communities are personal relationships and connections which encourage and support you in your recovery goals and your recovery journey. So they're people that are your cheerleaders, they're around you, they're supporting you, some to a lesser extent, some to a greater extent, but they're around you and they're all encouraging you on your journey as we go through this recovery process. These communities encourage, remind, and exhort us in our recovery journey and provide meaningful support in our times of strength and our weaknesses. Recovery communities can look very different, and there is no perfect church, recovery group, or sponsor accountability partner. We're all just people, we're flawed, but we can still use our abilities to encourage one another. What matters more is how we engage and interact with those around us in these different areas of community. Invest your time and energy in these different communities, and others will notice your commitment, and that you may be asked even to play leadership roles in these different settings and have the opportunity to shape them to a certain extent. So the more that we're out there in these communities, the more that we invest in them, the more that we actually get a return from them as well. So why do I need a recovery community? What's the big deal? Well, there's some biblical reasons why, and it talks about them in 3 different areas, which I will read here. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 12 tells us 2 are better off than 1, because together they can work more effectively. If one of them falls down, the other can help them up. But if someone is alone, there is no one to help him. 2 men can resist an attack that would defeat 1 man alone. So again, just giving that image, in that case, it's just 2 people. I think that kind of well represents like a sponsor accountability partner kind of relationship. You're tightly connected and you're able to share things with one another. Also, Proverbs 27:17 tells us, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Did you know that the phrase one another is used in the New Testament over 50 times? There's just a lot of language in the New Testament and the Old Testament that has to do with us being around each other and supporting one another. And finally, Hebrews 10:24 to 25 tells us, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up on meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but instead encouraging one another. So especially when you think of, being a part of a recovery meeting or our church, community, we need to keep attending those things, right? There may be tempting because something happens that we kind of lose some faith in that group, or we kind of lose interest in some way. But we need to keep being a part of that, because the magic happens, or the recovery happens after we put that time in, extensive time in. So some other reasons that come to, again, my head, this is my talk and these thoughts are all kind of my own, but did you know that recovery has at least 5 key elements to success? If your recovery program includes each of these areas, you are well on your way to sobriety and wholeness. Our recovery communities should directly or indirectly provide you with some of these key elements. So the first key to recovery is maintaining an honest view of reality. I have yet to see someone fail in their recovery who could be completely honest with themselves and others. I have, however, seen many give up on their recoveries because they could not step out of their denial and into God's truth. Having others around helps us to keep us honest and cuts through lies that may start to creep in over time. We need to continue to put ourselves in communities where we can be challenged by what others are doing and can then make changes in our own lives as well. So having this honest self-evaluation, being humble is such a key element in our recovery. And we need to maintain that, whether this is our first day in recovery or whether this is our 10th year in recovery. The second key element is making your attendance at your recovery group meetings a priority in your schedule. This means that we don't take the summer off or not attend weekly meetings because it's raining outside. Don't get me wrong, it's great to take a vacation, but after the 2 weeks are up, prioritize getting back to your recovery meetings. Remember that your addictions don't take a vacation. You need to make attending meetings a priority in all seasons and situations of life. Having others around encourages us to keep attending our meetings and stay committed to our recoveries. So again, these communities that we're part of, we can't just abandon these and kind of go away for long periods of time and not expect it to affect our recovery in some way. So again, being a part of these groups helps with these areas. The third key element is growing in your relationship with Jesus Christ through prayer, meditation, and study of his word. Interacting with others in faith-based recovery programs and in church groups inspires us to keep growing. Those around us can pray for us and help to keep us centered on God and his direction for our lives. God is the power source that enables us to resist things that we alone are powerless over. Therefore, any opportunity to get closer to him and to our spiritual community members is very important. We'll talk about this a bit later. Churches are not perfect places, and it's not that they are perfect at all times, but they will encourage us and they'll remind us of spiritual truths. And so it's important that we continue to interact with them. The fourth key element is wholeheartedly completing an extensive amount of recovery work. For me, the best structured way to do this is through the 12-step process, which guides us through the recovery journey in a deep and effective way. For others, an extensive amount of counseling and completing non-affiliated recovery work may provide a similar outcome, but it's my belief that it'll be less comprehensive. It won't kind of touch on all the areas that something like the 12 steps does. The goal of recovery work, regardless of what way a person goes about completing the work, is to firstly, identify yourself as having an addiction. Secondly, understand that God can support us in that journey. Third, inventory the harms that we have done to others and the underlying character defects within ourselves that led to those harms. Fourthly, sharing these harms and character defects with ourselves, God, and another person. Fifth, making amends as appropriate for the harms that we have caused. And finally, embrace a lifestyle of accountability, communion with God, and helping others on their recovery journey. Like really, that's what recovery is all about, those kind of, those 6 steps. Or those 6 areas, and some are kind of lumped together, but whatever kind of way you do it, you need to go through those aspects of your past and work on those areas. The last key element to a successful recovery program is getting involved in service. There are many service opportunities which become available to us as we grow our recovery communities. Service has been described as showing love to others while wearing work clothes. You know how you felt when someone greeted you during your first meeting. You can do that for others now and make others feel welcome by getting to know them, and especially those, again, who are newcomers. Be a listening ear and offer to talk with people between meetings. Ask leaders how you can help out. The opportunities that we have to serve others actually end up blessing us just as much as they help others. So again, finding ways that you can provide support to others is super key. And for those even who have completed the 12 steps, moving on to being a sponsor for somebody else is an incredibly powerful way to, I would say, continue to grow in our recovery, and encourages us to apply the truths that we've learned, because we're having to, in a sense, remind others of them. So at the same time, we remind ourselves of them. So it's super important to be involved and help others. Another reason for why we need these recovery community groups, it's the best guard against relapse. So when we are immersed in our recovery communities, either official or unofficial, so official would be attending a group like this, unofficial would be going to a church community, but we know that there's supportive people there. So regardless of what kind of community we're in, we are surrounded by those who know us, some more than others. Some will be casual acquaintances that we know at church, but some will know our story deeply at a recovery group or with our sponsor. The interactions that we have with others can keep us on track in our recovery, and we can be encouraged by others along the way. Those who know you best, such as a sponsor or an accountability partner, can also see your old dysfunctional, self-defeating patterns beginning to surface and point them out to us quickly. So again, if people know you, they can start to see the signs that maybe things are going off the rails for you, if that does occur. Others, especially your sponsor or accountability partner, can confront you with truth and love while pointing out where we are going wrong. Ecclesiastes 7:5 tells us that it is better to be criticized by a wise man than to be praised by a fool. The trouble with most of us is that we would rather be ruined by praise than saved by criticism. And I know that I would definitely fit into that category, and I need to continue to remind myself to be open and teachable to what others say. Identifying a sponsor or an accountability partner is especially important as we work the 12 steps, and this allows us to take our spiritual healing to the next level. Whatever you choose to call such a person, whether it's a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, or an accountability partner, they need to have a genuine faith and evidence of recovery in their lives. Get to know them as you work the 12 steps, and allow yourself to grow as you learn and emulate aspects of their life and recovery. It talks about in James how it is when we share and confess to other people that we actually gain healing. So if you think about it from that perspective, the more people that we tell about what's going on inside of us, the more opportunity there is for healing within ourselves. So we need to be sharing with others what's going on. So a well-rounded community. What does a well-rounded recovery community look like? We've talked about those three areas. There's our church community, our recovery meeting, and our sponsor. So I put a little diagram in the talk that kind of depicts this. But if you were to imagine, like, say, a triangle, the base level, or the thickest kind of base level that kind of goes up from there, would be our church community. And there's different ways. This will look a little bit different for each type of person. But a church community will, at least in my life, is kind of a broad group of people that I know. There's a few hundred of them, and I know them to some extent, but not very well. It's more like acquaintances, right? Then I come to a recovery meeting like this one and say there's 30 or 40 of us on the call. This is a narrower group, less people, but people know me better in that group. And then finally, sponsor is kind of the tip of the triangle. And that would be just a few people. My sponsor and accountability partners, say 3 to 5 people. And they're the people that know me super well, but there's only a few of them. So if you think of it in that way, to make up an entire triangle, you need those different types of kind of relationships. So as I talk about these 3 areas of a community, you may notice that we are starting with larger groups of people that we know less well, and then getting down to smaller groups of people who know us better. In my life, in terms of who knows me best in the context of my community, my large church community knows only a little bit in regards to my recovery journey. My small recovery community, however, this one, another one that I attend, know me pretty well. And my sponsor and accountability partners know me almost entirely. That is not to say that we cannot be well known by individuals within our church communities or any other type of setting, but I find for most people, they may have a similar arrangement as well. Let's now look in depth at each of these 3 types of communities. So firstly, our relationship with Jesus Christ and our church family. First and foremost, I believe that we need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ if we want to do well in our recovery. Others may disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But for myself, the good news that comes with the grace that is offered by Jesus Christ's sacrifice for my sins is the only way that I can live a shame-free life today. I think this is the case for most of us on this call, but for those who are non-believers, I personally can't imagine trying to do recovery while believing that there's no ultimate sacrifice for the sins that I've caused. Like I don't think that there's enough separation there for me to feel good about myself and continue to kind of proceed well in recovery. Like any relationship, we need to take time and effort in order to live together well. Jesus wants to live in our very hearts, so it is really important that we get to know someone, Jesus in this case, who is going to be so intimately involved with us. One of the ways that we get to know Jesus is getting to know others in our faith community. Churches are the most common example of these faith communities, at least in North America. Let me say from the outset that churches are not perfect places filled with perfect people. They never were meant to be, actually. And so we should not be surprised when less than ideal things take place within them from time to time. Like your family or mine, church families are a collection of imperfect people, and each church member exercises their free will in ways that may or may not provide for mutual edification at all times, unfortunately. And I just say this to put, I guess, a realistic spin on this. People have been hurt in church communities before, and I understand that. In spite of that, when Jesus first set up churches and what we were supposed to do with them, they were kind of talked about like hospitals, basically, like where broken people come and they interact with one another. So if you think of it in that way, I think it changes the way that, or what we expect from churches when we go about looking for one. So I guess just be realistic with what a church can do based on just who's in it. I'm in it. So it's obviously going to be imperfect from the start, right? So church communities are key for those of us in recovery as they remind us of who Jesus is and his character. We need reminders of key aspects of our faith and our identity, and churches can provide us with these reminders. Churches are also places in which we open up and become known to others who are safe and who are safe to share openly with. When I talk about being safe, I mean that the person that we are sharing with about ourselves needs to be of the same gender, and there need to not be the type of person who is easily shocked. And we're talking about a church community and kind of who we can maybe be open and honest with about our struggles. It needs to be a guy, and it needs to be somebody that's shock proof, somebody that's not going to be alarmed with the things that we're going to share with them. We may not share all of our deepest sins or the things that we that hold us, that are shameful for us, with our fellow church members, but we should be known to at least a few people in our churches who are aware of our struggles and are praying for us and checking in with us when we gather together on Sundays or any other day of the week. So it is good to be known by a few people within our church communities who know our struggles and can encourage us in our journey. One thing to note is that for those of us who grew up in a church, we may have been living a double life for many years. A double life means that we put on our best clothes and we say all the right things when we are together at church, but then we act in ways that do not show our faith when we are away from our church community. There are many of us who've been struggling with a sex addiction for years, but may play key positions of leadership in a church while pretending that we have it all together. It is imperative that we shed this double life as we grow in our recovery and become known to key people within our church. Is just super essential in order to keep us away from doing this again. So we need to fight that urge to appear perfect when we're in church communities, and then kind of just let loose when we're outside of them. That's just really not a healthy way to live. And again, the only way that we can do that is to become more known by those in our church community over time in safe ways. So that's the first area of community that I had talked about, was churches. The second is our recovery groups or recovery meetings. Recovery groups and meetings are really special things, actually. Where else in the world can you be known to a small group of others who can all instantly relate to you and the struggles that you have? Where else can we take our masks off and not face judgment and condemnation for the horrendous sins that we have committed to ourselves and others? I'm always reminded of the blessing that it is to have a safe refuge in the form of a recovery meeting like this one or others. When I was actively in my addiction, I felt like I was the only one in the world who struggled with sexual addiction to the extent that I did. While a few of my closest friends shared that they might masturbate once in a while, they could not understand my daily addiction to doing so. And the shame of being known as being a person that had such a problem was a daily burden that I wore for too many years, all on my own. When I attended my first recovery meeting, it felt like returning to a home that I had visited many years before, but I had somehow lost, right? The relief of knowing that I was not alone in the world was overwhelming. And it was within this context of a recovery meeting that I was able to adopt recovery for myself and start my journey towards sobriety. Attending the meetings weekly and sharing about my struggles has been huge and has allowed me to come out of my shell. And it allowed me to find my first sponsor and accountability partners that I would rely on and have continued to rely on as I worked the 12 steps and got involved in the service. One thing to note about recovery communities is that you don't have to attend just one. While many of us are busy and have different responsibilities that we must attend to, the reality is that we are trying to make some huge changes in our life, and only being exposed to recovery truths once a week for an hour and a half is not enough to keep us sober. especially if you do not live nearby someone else in, say, our ReGroup. I would strongly encourage you to supplement what you get online here at ReGroup with an in-person meeting in your community. The leader at my first recovery meeting that I first went to talked about how we need Jesus with skin on. Or in other words, we need another person to sit in front of us, to listen to us, and occasionally give us a hug in order to get us through this journey known as recovery. In the same way that we need to treat an illness in various ways, we also need to treat our recovery in various ways and settings as well. So yeah, again, for anybody in this group who perhaps you live quite a ways away from other people within the group, there are many other groups, and maybe some of them would be secular, or they might be more of a church feeling to them, less recovery focused. We still do need to be finding opportunities for that face-to-face involvement in some way. I know for me currently, I attend this group on Tuesdays, and I attend a Monday in-person group in Abbotsford in my home community. So there's pros and cons to doing things online or doing things in different ways. So make sure you get what you need in the ways that you need it in order to get through recovery journey. So yeah. So the third category, our sponsor and our accountability partners. For me, the people who know me best are my sponsor and accountability partners. These are people that I selected from my recovery meetings and I asked to support me on my recovery journey. These people could be selected as well from your church community, from your extended family, or perhaps even your work, depending on what your comfort level is with them. I will say, just be careful that the person you're selecting is not someone that, I guess when we fully are honest with them, that's going to change our relationship with them. The nice thing about selecting somebody from recovery group is that ultimately they're not a part of my life in terms of like my family, or they're not a supervisor over me or some kind of a coworker. So just be really careful who you select and make sure that what you share with them won't change that relationship in some way. However, we're going to discuss what qualities often make a good candidate for a sponsor or accountability partner in a few minutes. As mentioned previously, you may call these people whatever you want to. However, for me, I distinguish actually between having a sponsor and an accountability partner, and I'll define how I see their roles now. So for me, a sponsor is someone who has worked through the 12 steps already. And the main goal of this relationship is to choose someone to guide you, or me in this case, through the 12-step program. After the 12 steps are over, you will hopefully be able to continue to meet with that person and continue to be accountable to them if you can make your schedules kind of aligned to do so. They will now know you very well and will be in the best possible place to be able to notice when you are not on a good path and can encourage you as you continue to progress. So a sponsor relationship is a super powerful one in my mind and just incredibly useful. So then on the other hand, an accountability partner, the way I define it again, is someone that you ask to hold you accountable for certain areas of your recovery or issues, such as meeting attendance, journaling, and so forth. This person can be at the same level of recovery that you are, unlike a sponsor who should have already completed the 12 steps ideally. The main goal of this relationship is to encourage one another and to meet, and it's much more of like on the same level kind of relationship. You can even form an accountability team of 3 or 4 people. It doesn't just have to be 2. The accountability partner or group acts as the team, whereas the sponsor's role is that more of a coach or a mentor. So what are the qualities of a sponsor or an accountability partner? What should you kind of be looking for when you're looking around in a recovery group like this or in any other setting? So yeah, look for these following qualities. Number 1, does his walk match his talk? Is he living the steps? I've known many people who have the 12-step lingo down pat, but their lifestyle doesn't always match their talk. Be certain that the person that you choose as a sponsor is someone whose life example is worthy of imitation, because really that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to grow in the image of that person. If you think of what a mentor is, or what if you're an apprentice to that person, in a sense, you want to learn from them and learn to emulate them. Secondly, does he have a growing relationship with Jesus Christ? Do you see the character of Christ, his love, forgiveness, and acceptance developing in him? So again, having a shared faith is super important. Does he express the desire to help others on the road to recovery? There's a difference between helping others and trying to fix others. We all need to be careful to guard the sponsorship relationship from becoming unhealthy and codependent. Even with a sponsorship relationship, that person isn't there to save me if I'm going off the rails. They can provide input, they can provide suggestions, but really it's my journey and it's my recovery. And it's ultimately my responsibility in terms of what I kind of do with my time. So number 4, does he show compassion, care, and hope, but not pity? You don't need someone to feel sorry for you, but you do need someone to be sensitive to your pain. People don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. So again, they need to have empathy, but not to pity you. Number 5, is he a good listener? Do you sense that he honestly cares about what you have to say and he gives you the attention that deserves? Number 6, is he strong enough to confront your denial or procrastination? Does he care enough about you in your recovery to challenge you when he sees me, not meeting with him or not getting the work done, that kind of a thing? Number 7, does he offer suggestions? Sometimes we need help in seeing options or alternatives that we are unable to find on our own. A good sponsor can take an objective view and offer suggestions, but he should not give orders. And number 8, in terms of the last quality to look for, can he share his own current struggles with others? Is he willing to open up and be vulnerable and transparent? I don't know about you, but I don't want a sponsor who says that he has worked the steps. I want a sponsor who is living and working the steps every day as well. So that's the qualities of a sponsor, kind of what they should look like. But then what does a sponsor do day in, day out when they're meeting with you and such? So again, some things that they will do, he can be there to discuss issues in detail that are too personal or would take too much time in a meeting. This is especially true with our step 4 when we're doing our 12-step process. You don't share your complete inventory in a group setting. We don't have time, on a Tuesday morning here at ReGroup to do that, but you have to do that instead with a person, kind of one-to-one. So the sponsor can be there to share his own experiences and offer strength and hope. The sponsor's role is to model Christ's love, grace, and forgiveness, and to give us a sense of perspective. Secondly, he is available in a time of crisis or potential relapse. Remember Ecclesiastes 4:12, which says 2 men can resist an attack that would defeat 1 man alone. Again, I would say here, though, is, it's not their job to come and, swoop you out of a situation that you might have put yourself into. Again, they can hopefully give you, just an awareness of, hey, I think you're in trouble here. But ultimately, we will choose what we're going to do. So it's not their responsibility what we end up deciding to do. But he can be available potentially at some odd hours if there's things that we really need. So he serves as a sounding board by providing an objective point of view. This is especially true when we get to step 8, when we're deciding who we're going to give amends to. When you're dealing with the sensitive area of making amends and offering forgiveness, you need a good sounding board. And this is especially true in terms of how we approach amends, because not in every situation does it make sense to give amends directly to them. Sometimes we have to give living amends instead. And so a sponsor can help to figure that out. Number 4, he is there to encourage you to work the steps at your own speed. It is not his job to work the steps for you. He can coach your progress, confront you when you're stuck, and slow you down when you're working too fast. 5th, most important, he attempts to model the lifestyle that results from working the 12 steps. It's difficult to inspire others to accomplish what you haven't been willing to try yourself. A good sponsor lives out the steps, so that should be something that they are doing as well. And finally, a sponsor can resign and can be fired. Sponsorship is not a lifetime position. It is very helpful if this is clarified from the beginning. But if the purpose was to complete the 12 steps and then people's schedules have changed, sponsorships can totally end, and that's not a bad thing. It just means that the purpose has been accomplished and both are moving on to something else now. So how do I find a sponsor or an accountability partner? Ultimately, this is really going to depend on you and your community, and it's going to be up to the people that you want to approach to ask about that. But first and foremost, just a few suggestions is that the person must be of the same gender as you, and no exceptions on this. Sharing deep and personal details about your life with someone of the opposite gender will inevitably open up an emotional door and cause the lines of friend versus partner to begin to be blurred. That's my thoughts on it. I don't really see a way around that. Knowing myself, I can't honestly say that if I shared that with somebody, that wouldn't get me in trouble later. So for me, it's got to be somebody of the same gender. Invest some time in fellowship and get to know others in your recovery group or meetings that you attend. Again, this is, in my mind, always the best way to find somebody. It's on this call, looking around, seeing who is kind of modeling the steps and who's doing a good job and somebody that you want to emulate and kind of grow to be like. And then ask them to go for coffee, or ask them to have a separate Zoom call with them, or get their number and call them or something like that. These are the ways that you can find the best people that are on the same kind of journey as you. Again, you can find people in your church community as well, or potentially other places. But I find usually recovery meetings are where I find my people that I get to be my sponsor, accountability partner. Can you relate to this person's story? If you were choosing someone to be your sponsor, does he meet the qualities of good sponsor that we just kind of went over? Fourthly, if you ask someone to be your sponsor and that person says no, do not take it as a personal rejection. Remember that their own recovery has to come first, and they may sponsor others, and the responsibility of leadership is great. If they say no, it's not personal. It just means that their plate is simply too full at this time. If someone turns you down, ask somebody else. You can even ask for what's called a temporary sponsor for a short period of time. And remember, these are not lifetime commitments, but again, just be active and don't take it personally. Just go in knowing that that person might be busy, so you might have to ask somebody else again. And finally, most importantly, ask God to lead you to the sponsor of his choosing. He knows your needs. He has someone in mind already for you. All you need to do is pray to him and ask for his guidance and his will, and then just start sending those feelers out and asking people. James 1:5 says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So to wrap up finally, continue building your team. So to wrap things up, creating a solid recovery community for yourself is important and takes intentional work. By doing so, you are investing in your own and others' recovery, and the payout at the end is well worth the cost upfront. The relationships that you build now in this difficult season of life may very well end up being your most committed friendships in the future and can open up a plethora of opportunities later. I've had the opportunity to both cry with, but also rejoice with my recovery community and closest recovery friends as we together share aspects of our lives, such as getting married, having children, and many other amazing milestones along the way. Recovery communities are likely not something that any of us ever thought we would have had to build in our lifetime. But yet here we are, here we are on this call. We've all come from different places and situations, and likely none of us wanted to be in this situation, but we're here now, and we can actually make the most of it and really enjoy these relationships with people that will know us way better than our maybe traditional friends ever would in some circumstances. Life has brought us to this point, and we have the opportunity now to be open and honest with others and to show God's grace to others by sharing what he has done in our lives. I personally have been richly blessed by my involvement in various recovery communities, and I'm now invested in being a part of such communities to help myself and others for the future. So you can start forming accountability teams with the people in your life right now. When you share with people, look for those that you relate to and are filling your cup. Ask if they're interested in holding you accountable for something. Let God work and see what happens. I can guarantee this, though. Nothing will happen if you don't ask. So start looking for and building your support team today. So that's the end of the talk. Thank you for listening. And I just commend you in your own journey of creating recovery communities. So yeah.